In this video, we're going to be going over if statements. So if statements are simple to understand, but an important concept in programming, and you'll be making significant use of if statements when developing your scripts in Roblox Studio. So I'm going to go over a little demo with an example of the use of an if statement here. All right, so I'm going to start up the game. All right, so we got our little pizza guy here, and he's going to deliver us some pizzas to these tables. Well, it's going to magically make them appear here. So what we have here, we have the ability for us to order pizzas from the pizza guy, and each time we order a pizza, we have some logic in a script that has an if statement. So it's going to look at if there's any pizza on this table. If there's no pizza on this table, the pizza will be put onto this table, and then it'll check next if there's any pizza on this table, and it'll put the pizza on this table. And then finally, if there's pizza on both those tables, it'll put pizza on the third table. And then if all our tables are full of pizza and there's no room and we try to order pizza again, he's just going to shut down the store. So let's just demonstrate this. So where the pizza is placed is all controlled by an if statement. So let's go and order our pizza. So I'm going to order one. Look at that. We got our pizza on table 1. Order again. We got our pizza on table 2. Order again. We got our pizza on table 3. Let's try ordering one more time. Oh, he shuts the door. No more pizza for us. At the end of the video, we'll take a look at the code that generated our pizza, but first we're going to go over the basics of if statements. All right, so an if statement is a conditional statement that lets you tell your code to only do something if a certain condition is true. So you look at the screen here, this is our script, and in this script, this is just kind of have the basic structure of an if statement here. So each if statement just starts with if, and then you have your condition, and then it's a then, and then potentially you could have else, but you don't need else, so it could just be like this. So it could just be if, then, end, and then you'd have your code here, and if this condition is true, it would execute the code in here. So you can optionally have an else. So if this condition was false, it would not run here. What it would do is go into the else block and run the code in the else block. So to make up these conditions, there's a bunch of comparison operators that you can use to compare things. So we have the greater than. So in that case, you just use the greater than symbol. You have less than. So we just use a less than symbol. Then there's greater than or equal to. So it's just greater than with an equals sign next to it. And then there's a less than or equal to. So there's a less than symbol, then the equal sign, and then the equal to. So you'll notice with the equal to, it has 2 equal signs side by side. So when you're doing a conditional comparison, you need to use 2 equal signs when checking if something is equal. If you look at the top here, we have this variable value a. You see it has a single equal sign because that's an assignment. So when you're doing an assignment, you're assigning a value to a variable. You use a single equal sign. When you're checking a condition, use 2 equal signs to check if something is equal to. All right, so the last comparison operator we're going to look at is the not equal to. So the not equal to starts with this little squiggly line, which is called the tilde. So it's tilde, then equal sign, and that's what we use for not equal to in Lua. In other programming languages, not equal to is generally an exclamation mark, but Lua decided to be special and went with the tilde. So in the condition with this if statement, we're checking to see that the value a is less than value b. And we put in this print statement here. So then when it runs this, if this condition is true, which it will be because you see at the very top we have value a is 5, value b is 10. So value a is less than value b. It should print this statement here. So let's run that and take a look, and we should be able to see that in the output window here. All right, so we clicked play and the script has ran, and we can see the result in the output window here. So value a is less than value b. Okay, so now let's add a little bit to this if statement. We're going to add an else. And then we're going to put a print statement here also. For the print statement, we'll put value a is not less than b. Okay, so let's go and adjust our value a value at the top here. And we're going to make it so it's greater than b. So this will end up being not true. So we'll make this 15. All right, so now if we look at this, so value a is now 15, and it is not less than value b. So this will end up being false. So since it's false, it should not go into this block. It should go into the else block and print what's in the else block. All right, let's click play and see what happens. Okay, so in our output window, we got value A is not less than B, just as we expected. All right, let's take a look at another if statement. So with this if statement, we added something a little new. So we have else if in this one. So let's walk over this if statement and see what we have here. So we have this check value variable we created, and we assigned value 13 to it. So this check value is equal to 13. So to start off our if statement, we have if value A is greater than check value, and then has this print statement if that is true. And if this is not true, it's going to go over to this else if. So if the first block ends up being false, it'll move on to the next block. And then it's going to check that condition. So is value B greater than 13? If that is true, it'll print this. And then finally, if both conditions are false, it's going to go over to the else, and it's going to print what's in the else block. So just one other thing. So if the first thing is true, it doesn't go in with the next. It's always just going to stop there. So if the initial condition is true, it will just go and print out that initial block, and then it'll move off. It will not look at the else if, or it will not go to the else. All right, so let's go up to the top. So we have our value A equals 15. So it looks like this should be true. So value A is greater than the check value. So we're going to expect it to print out this here. So let's give that a try. All right, click play to start it up. And then as expected, value A is greater than 13 because value A is 15 currently. All right, let's change the value of A. We're going to make it so it's 12. And let's keep value B at 10 also. So we look at our logic here in our if statement and our conditions. Now that we changed value A to 12, this condition will be false. And then it's going to go and check on this next condition, value B. And value B is also less than 13, so this will also be false. So what it will do, it's going to pass over this, it'll go to this, and then it'll also say this is false, and it should jump into this else block, because if either of these are true, it just goes into the else, and it'll print what's in the else. All right, let's give that a try. All right, so we got our value A and value B are less than 13 in the output window. So just as we expected. All right, so in this script, we're going to cover something new. We're going to cover logical operators. So there's 3 logical operators, and, or, not. And you can use those within the conditions of your if statement. So if we take a look at the top of this file here, we have 2 variables, and they're both Booleans. We have true or false statements assigned to those variables. So we have if has money is equal to false, and we have has time is equal to true. So we go down to our if statement here and look at this first condition here. We're seeing it has money is equal to true. Then we have this logical operator end. So then has time is equal to true. So for this entire statement to be true, both has money has to be equal to true and has time has to be equal to true. So it can't just be one or the other, it has to be and. So both of these have to be equal to true before it will come in here and print this statement. So we're also using else if with this if statement. So if this ends up not being both true, it's going to jump down and see this. Does this individual have money? If that's true, it'll print this. And then if that is not true, this is also false. It's going to jump down here. It's going to check has time. And if has time is equal to true, it'll go into that block. And if that is also not true, it'll finally reach our else statement. And it'll print no money and no time. All right, so we're going to run things to see what happens here. But remember, so we have has money equals false and has time equals true. So what do you think is going to happen here? So only one of these are true up here. So I don't think it's going to hit in here. Has money is false, so it's probably not going to stop here. But we have has time equals true. So I think we're probably going to see it come in here. Has time, but no money. So let's give it a try. All right, look in the output window. We got exactly what we expected. Have time, but no money. Okay, so we'll switch has money to true, so you can just see what happens there. Okay, let's run it again. All right, so both of them true. Now we get the print statement, have the money and time to do what I want. All right, and then obviously, based on these different values, you're going to get different results here. So if we had both of these false, you'll end up in the else. If has money was false and has time was true, you're going to end up here, have time but no money. All right, let's look at our next if statement here. So in this one, we're using the or logical operator. So you see here, we have has money equals true or has time equals true. So that's the condition for the if statement. And then, so if either of these are true, we're going to have money or the time. But if both of them are false, then you'll jump down into the else, no money and no time. So you look at the top, our current values for both has money and has time are both true. So we're going to expect it to hit here. All right, let's give it a try. All right, have the money or the time prints out in the output window, just as expected. Let's change has time to false. And we're going to click play again. Oh, and then we also get the same thing, have the money or the time. So we got that because has money is still true. So it's still going to go in here because it's one or the other has to be true because of the or. If this was an and, both would have to be true. All right, so our final logical operator we're going to look at is not. So what not does, if we take a look at this if statement, so we have a number equal to 5. So this is a variable called number, and we gave it a value of 5. So we have the conditional state where number is less than 10. But what it's actually going to do is it's going to say, is this not? So it's kind of like the opposite. So what it does is kind of inverts this. So in this case, where it has number is less than 10, if that was true, we would not be going into this block because we have a not in front of it. So we want to check if this is not true. And let's run this and we'll see what happens with this if statement with the not logical operator. All right, so we got this number is not greater than 10 as we expected to get. All right, so we have another example of what you can use the not logical operator for. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the not operator to check to see if a player is in the game or not. So we have this player variable created here. We're having it set to game.players find first child. We're looking for John, so there's a player named John in the game, which there will not be because my player is not John and I'll be the only one in the game. So I have a character called Boogie Niner 49er. So this is going to result in this player object being nil or null, which means there's nothing, it's not there. So what you can do is go if not player. So if this is null, there's nothing here, then it's going to print out John is not in the game. And if it did find the player John, it would print out John is in the game. All right, and then just right below that, we have another variable called player2. We're doing the same thing, but this time we're checking for the player Boogie Niner 49er. And in that case, I'll be in the game, so it should find my player. So when it goes to check to see if not player 2, it's going to go, well, there is a player here. So therefore, we're going to jump into the else. I want to say Booger 49er is in the game. Okay, let's give it a play and we'll see what happens here. All right, so as expected, it did not find John. So John is not in the game, but it did find myself, which is my self character right here. So Boogie Niner 49er is in the game. All right, so that covers the core principles of if statements, and it gives you a good kind of foundation of how what if statements are, how they work. So it'd be a good idea to start playing around with the if statements so you get a good understanding of how they work. You can try the conditional operators, play around with the if, the else, different combinations of things, and just kind of get a better understanding of how the if statement works so you can use it more effectively when you're building your game. All right, so I did say I was going to go through and kind of show you guys how this if statement was used in here. So remember, we have the order pizza. So I can go 1, do it again, second table, do it again, third table, and order one more time. He shuts the door on us. So let's jump into the script, and I'll kind of give you a general overview of how this if statement works. So it's just an example, kind of a real-world example of how you could use an if statement in actual gameplay. Okay, so there's a little more than just if statements taking place here to kind of get this all working, but what we have here, so what I have here is I have this shop block. So this is just a block, little part I have placed in front of the table here. And on that shop block, I've added a proximity prompt. So if you get close enough to that block, it pops up the proximity prompt, which I currently have saying order pizza here. So this is the proximity prompt. And then on that proximity prompt, I have a script. So the proximity prompt is the parent of this script. Now let's double click on this script and go into that script. Okay, so this is the location in the script where I have the if statement. So you'll see there's a few different things going on here. So we have this proximity prompt, and there's an event on that proximity prompt called triggered. So we have prompt.triggered, and I connect it to, and I have this function here. So we're not going to go exactly how all this works, because this tutorial was specifically about if statements. So it's just kind of showing you a real-world example of how an if statement will work here, and we're probably going to go into how this all works in more detail in a next video we'll kind of cover on how these functions and some of these other things work, like the proximity prompt. To give you a better understanding on that, let's just focus in on the if statement for now. So you see here, I'm using this table has pizza function I created, and I pass in the table variables for each of the tables, and then we get the result back from this table has pizza function, whether they have pizza or not. So it's going to set this to true or false, depending if they have pizza on that table. And then here's the if statement. It's simply going through if has pizza on 1 equals false, then if there's no pizza on that table, we can add pizza to table. So I have another function I created to add pizza to table. And then else if has pizza 2, so if this ends up being false. So if has pizza 1 end up being true, it's going to go and check the next condition, which is has pizza 2 equals false. And then we're going to see if that is false. If that is false, we'll add pizza to table 2. If that ends up being true, it's going to jump down to the next else if has pizza 3 equals false. If that is true, it'll add pizza to table 3. If has pizza 3 was true and there's already pizza on that table, let's jump into the last else block here. And it's just going to go, we have a shop door, which is just a part we have in place. We're going to adjust the transparency so that it's visible again, and the shop is now closed. All right, so there's an example of a use of an if. We'll go into how these other things work in a future tutorial, the add pizza table and the table has pizzas, because there's a little more complicated concepts taking place in those methods. I can just kind of go over them here quickly. All right, and this is the table has pizza function. So this function here is just taking in the table, and we're looking to see, we're going through and looking at all the parts on the table to see if there's any touching parts that are touching the table that have this name handle on them. So the handle is a part within the pizza itself. So the pizza slices have the name handle on them in the pizza model. So that's what that is doing. And basically all it does, if it finds that there's a part with the name handle touching one of the parts on the table, it returns true. If not, returns false. All right, and here's the add pizza to table function. So this one uses replicated storage, and then we're basically, and what I have in here is for each of the tables, I have predetermined locations, X, Y, and Z coordinates for each of the tables to place that pizza on. Then we're using replicated storage because we have our pizza in replicated storage. So then we can take that and clone that and place it on top of the table depending on the table number that's passed in to the function. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on our next topic that will be coming up fairly shortly. Right, thanks for watching.